Sure, this is Chad Laurent, Senior Consultant and General Counsel at Meister Consultants Group, and we, along with my colleague Will Hanley, developed the case studies and have been working with DOER and CISA under the Rooftop Solar Challenge program.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. So just to let you know, this webinar is recording, and the presentation will be available on our website in about 48 hours at that link that you can see on your screen. If you click on the camera icon, top right of your screen, to save any slides for future reference, and there's a Q&A icon on your screen as well. We'll be taking those questions and answering them at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type them in as we move along. And lastly, this presentation will be posted at the link below. So the Green Communities Division, most of you should be familiar with this division. We have currently 155 communities designated as green communities, but we're not only a resource to those municipalities, but also a resource to all Massachusetts cities and towns, and we offer numerous technical assistance and programs to help municipalities with their energy needs. You should know, you should probably be aware already of your green community regional coordinators. In the top left, we have Jim Berry, who's our Western Regional Coordinator. We have, underneath him, we have Kelly Brown, who's our Central Region. And to the top right is Joanne Becerra, who is our Northeast Region. And lastly, Seth Pickering, our Southeast Regional Coordinator. And their emails are right here on the slideshow. So also, if you log on to our website, you can get their contact information there as well. But these folks are tremendous resources for municipal officials and are absolutely willing to help out. So please reach out to them with any specific questions that you might have. Some of the other programs and resources that the Green Communities Division offers for municipalities, obviously we have our designation and competitive grant program. There's also the Mass Energy Insight Energy Tracking and Analysis Tool, the Municipal Energy Efficiency Assistance, Energy Management Services Technical Assistance, Mass Municipal Energy Group. And if you go on to the website right there, you can find more tools and resources, as well as the contact information I mentioned for the regional coordinators on the last slide. Also, we do bi-weekly e-blasts, and if you would like to sign up to receive those, just copy that link and log on. Just wanted to also mention that we are currently, so we just completed, or in the process of completing, our designation grant for 2015. We're in the 9th round. 19 new green communities had signed on, making us into 155 now. And right now we are launching the process of the competitive grant program. And so to be eligible for competitive grants, green communities, designated green communities, must have expended all prior green communities designation and competitive grant funds. They must have submitted their fiscal year 2015 annual report and satisfied all outstanding questions no later than 5 p.m. of February 12th, and submitted their final grant report and satisfied all outstanding questions no later than February 26th, tomorrow, at 5 o'clock. And lastly, completed all site inspections with your regional coordinator by March 11th, 2016. With all those tasks completed, you're eligible to apply for a competitive grant, which is up to $250,000. And all questions on the application must be submitted through Combis by 5 p.m. on March 18th, 2016, and then applications must be submitted online by 5 p.m. on March 25th, 2016, and you have to be registered with Combis to access. Now, there's more information about this on our website as well, and if you have any further questions, specific questions, definitely encourage you to reach out to your regional coordinators.
Now that you know a little bit more about the Green Communities program, I want to launch into a little bit more about how Massachusetts, and particularly DOER, got involved in the Rooftop Solar Challenge. So in Massachusetts, there are two main groups that are influencing the solar market right now, and includes Mass DOER and the Green Communities Division, which you just heard about, and also the Mass Clean Energy Center. And really, these two groups have helped propel the solar market in Massachusetts to where it is now. Massachusetts is actually number 4 in the country for installations, and you can see the growth here on this slide. And with this growth, there's a lot of opportunity to address something called soft costs. The cost of solar panels themselves have actually gone down a bit, and the soft costs, there's a lot of opportunity. So we decided to participate in the Department of Energy Rooftop Solar Challenge. There's been 2 rounds, which we've worked on both of those. And in round 1, we focused on reducing those soft costs of small commercial and residential rooftop solar PV. There's some great resources available on our website if you haven't seen them already, including an implementation guide for community shared solar. We also developed a local model permitting process with guidance for structural review, and developed a model solar bylaw zoning language. So if you haven't seen those already, make sure to take a look at our website. And in round 2, we focused on a regional approach with this 5-state effort to really target these soft costs. And this effort was coordinated by Clean Energy States Alliance, CESA. And the focus on this partnership is really both the permitting and interconnection challenges, really looking at the need for new financial tools, and planning and zoning rule variation. That's a little bit about the 2 Rooftop Solar Challenge efforts, but now I want to introduce Meister and our first poll question. So Chad and will take it from here, and hopefully you'll see on your screen one of 3 of the poll questions we'll be asking during the webinar today. The first poll question will be, have you seen Mass DOER model permitting guide for municipalities? So select yes or no, and we'll be able to see your answers. And there'll be 2 other poll questions later on in this presentation. Thanks for your answers, and now I'll hand it over to Chad and Will.
Great, thanks Tony, and thanks Kara. As Kara mentioned, soft costs are now a significant portion of the cost of a solar PV installation in the United States. So the modules themselves have come down about 99% in cost since 1975. But here in the United States, as the next slide demonstrates, we still pay about twice as much for an installed residential solar PV system as they do in Germany. I think we're just waiting for the slide to go to the next one. If you hold on for 1 second. There we go. So we still are, in the US, we're paying about twice what they are in Germany. Now, given the fact that the market for modules and the actual hardware is global, there's no real difference in cost in terms of modules between the US and Germany. So the difference is that portion that we call soft costs. Next slide. And those soft costs are made up of things like paperwork, permitting and inspection time and costs and fees, as well as financing costs, customer acquisition costs, and installation labor costs. And as I mentioned, we pay in the US about 64% of the total installed cost of a solar PV installation is related to those soft costs. And so as a former Secretary of Energy used to say, even if all of the equipment and hardware were free, you could still have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get a solar system installed on your roof. And an illustration of this, and because we're in Massachusetts, you get to make a little bit of fun, poke a little fun at New York City. So it used to take about a year to get a solar PV system installed on a residential rooftop in New York City. And through the great and heroic efforts of the folks as part of the Solar America Cities initiative back in the day in New York City, they were able to reduce that down to about 100 days. So from the time that you tell a solar installer you're interested in installing solar to when that system is up and running on your roof takes about 100 days, maybe a little better than that now. Not unusual here in Massachusetts for it to take at least a couple months from the time that you would sign the dotted line with the solar installer that you get a system installed and interconnected. Compare that to Germany, where you can go from calling the solar installer to getting everything interconnected and the system is producing on your roof within a week. And the story that this example is taken from, the installer showed up in the morning, worked with the homeowner, called the utility around 10 in the morning, told the utility where they were. The utility showed up in the afternoon. All the permits were in place. The utility interconnected it that same day. So the actual installation and most of that time needed to make that installation actually occurred about within 48 hours. So we sort of have a long way to go in order to reach those levels of efficiency, but there's a lot of little things that local governments can do to help that along. So one of the key aspects or costs is permitting. And when you compare permitting times in the U.S. to Germany, it takes on average, this is U.S. average, about 7.5 times more man hours needed to pull a permit to get solar installed on a rooftop than it does in Germany, which results in about 21 times the cost of permitting in the U.S. versus Germany. So part of that is the fact that there's one sort of unified permit across the whole country, whereas in the United States we have 18,000 different permitting jurisdictions, 5,000 different utilities, and 50 different states. So we're obviously not going to be that streamlined. But within a jurisdiction like Massachusetts, where you have more than 300 different unique permitting jurisdictions, there's certainly some ways to improve the efficiency of that process. So the key to that success in Germany really is consistency and transparency and a standardized processes for permitting solar PV. So that leads us to poll question 2, and this is mostly geared towards if there are any solar installers in the audience. But how important is it to you as a solar installer, how important is streamlined permitting processes in choosing which jurisdictions you're active in? So if you get a call from a customer and it's either in a good or a bad, so to speak, jurisdiction as far as permitting, how important is that?
Okay, so with 17% voting, we've got 50% saying extremely important and 50% saying moderately important.
Great. So as the numbers sort of show, it certainly is an important aspect, and with half of the responses that we received saying extremely important, it certainly helps drive the decision of where the solar market is going. The solar market will likely go to places that it's easier to get the work done, and that translates also into lower costs for homeowners or businesses or others that are choosing to go solar. So the next slide is, why would a local jurisdiction choose to spend their valuable time trying to streamline permitting for solar? So for one, promoting standards and safety, making sure that the processes and the requirements for permitting are up to date, meeting all safety standards, making sure that systems installed within the jurisdiction are done right to high standards, and also safe for homeowners or businesses that are in choosing solar. It saves time and taxpayers' dollars. So it doesn't just save time for the installers who have to pull the permits, but also saves time at the municipal staff level. If municipal staff are trained to recognize sort of what is required of permits, and there's a standard permit, those permits are submitted correctly the first time by installers, that saves a lot of time and money for local permitting departments, which are strapped for time and resources, and have all sorts of other permits that they're dealing with, not just solar. So having a streamlined and standard process helps save time, can help reduce the fees that are charged, and that in turn helps save taxpayer dollars. And also, as I mentioned, if a goal of the local community is to increase the amount of solar which is adopted, it helps grow local economies, creates local jobs, creates a local solar market when you have friendly permitting processes that aren't necessarily, one of the factors maybe keeping solar installers less likely to want to do more business in that jurisdiction. So what did we do? What were we asked to do? So we interviewed 34 different jurisdictions across the Commonwealth to get a snapshot of what the permitting process is across those jurisdictions throughout diverse geography across the state. Reviewed any changes in permitting, a similar sort of analysis of what the costs and times of permitting had been about 3 years ago. So we wanted to see if there were any changes between when the Rooftop Solar Challenge 1 grant was enacted till today. And then we wanted to develop 4 case studies to sort of highlight some of the best practices within jurisdictions in Massachusetts, so others have examples of things that they can do to help reduce permitting costs and streamline permitting processes. So what is a typical permitting process for solar PV look like? So first, an application is submitted, and we'll get into this, but how that application is submitted can add or add costs or make it easier, whether you can do that online or whether you have to do it in person. The permit is reviewed to make sure that the application is complete. Then the permit is issued to commence work. Construction commences. Then there's usually a follow-up inspection, ideally just one, but sometimes there can be multiple inspections, which again adds time and money. And then the permit's closed out. The system can go ahead and seek interconnection. So there's all sorts of various improvements that can be made along any one of these steps in the permitting process. This is just the map of the 34 jurisdictions that we interviewed. We reached out to 42. Not everyone got back to us, but the majority of them did. So this just shows the geographic dispersion of those interviews. And the structure, what did we ask them? We asked current process, current fees, what their process and fees were like 3 years ago, and whether or not they were familiar with any sort of streamlined permitting efforts, if they had attended any of the great DOER trainings for code officials and inspectors, and any familiarity with existing sort of best practices and other materials. So what did we find? So there was an amazing amount of variability. So it took between a day to get a permit to a month, depending on between the 34 jurisdictions that we interviewed. So obviously there's a huge difference in cost between having to wait a day to get a permit versus a month to get a permit, which again, this is just one step in the permitting process, and also just one step in what it takes to get a solar PV system installed on your roof. Similarly, we found a huge variability in fees. So we looked at what would the fees be for roughly a $15,000 PV system. So that's somewhere between a 3 to 5 kW system, smallish residential rooftop system. What would those permit fees be for that size of a system? And again, huge variability there, anywhere between $125. Some jurisdictions waived their fees during solarized programs, which we'll talk about in a little bit, all the way up to $625 for that same permit. So again, here it's not clear that the reasons for those are that it's particularly expensive in one jurisdiction to review or accept a permit for solar PV. So that variability is something to consider, and also impacts the overall cost of the system to the homeowner. And so as Kara mentioned and showed in that slide, there's been a dramatic increase in the amount of solar PV installed in Massachusetts, and this has impacts of various stakeholders, and permitting processes that are in place impacts a number of different stakeholders. So building departments, and talking to building departments, they see a wide variability in the quality of applications that they see from installers. So even if they post all their requirements online, they have a pretty straightforward process, Some installers are better than others about filling it out correctly the first time, and so it obviously adds time and expense to have to go back and make corrections over time. So as the market increases rapidly, that's one sort of feedback response that we've seen or heard from building departments. Installers, their feedback, and we also interviewed installers through this process, had a difficult time in terms of consistency, the wide variability in cost and time and what you need to submit across jurisdictions that are geographically neighbors. And there isn't inherently any real difference in terms of pulling a permit, no matter where you are within the state of Massachusetts. I mean, there are certainly slightly different snow loads, maybe slightly different wind loads, but in general, no matter where you're pulling a permit, a residential rooftop system in Massachusetts is more similar to all the others than it is not. So that consistency can be frustrating and also add time and money. And then in terms of residents, there's uncertainty in terms of how long is it going to take until my system is installed, and there are incentives in Massachusetts, and also until recently at the federal level there were deadlines in terms of when you would be eligible for incentives, and when you're not sure how long it's going to take to get a permit, that leads to anxiety and uncertainty, as well as potential added costs in terms of waiting for all that to take place. So I will turn it over to my colleague Will, who did a lot of great work in compiling the case studies, but we selected 4 communities for case studies. Will get into those, and the communities that we're going to highlight are Boston, Northampton, Pittsfield, and Wellfleet. So Will.
Thanks, Chad. And like Chad said, we selected these 4, varying in geographic location, but also in size as well. But to start, Boston, we selected them because they switched to a long form and short form permit application for building permits. The short form requires less documentation and applies to residential structures that are smaller and are for minor alterations, while the long form is for major alterations and commercial size projects. And this requires additional documentation. But it's important to note that the short form only requires, or it's only checked for completion as a letter of approval is sent in with a professional engineer, and that way, detailed structural analysis isn't necessary. But with the long form application, they are eligible. Select projects that are larger in size, either a larger residential system or a commercial rooftop system, is eligible for the Solar Fast Track program. And basically what that means is those eligible systems are moved to the front of the queue in terms of the review process for structural analysis and zoning review. And that can really speed it up. Because these projects are more straightforward in terms of their review process, a rooftop system is very similar to another rooftop system. And looking at the graph to the left, that improved times from 30 days to about 7 days, which is about 77% faster. On top of that, Boston also released a solar permitting guide, and this sort of educational outreach, it's available on their website, but this sort of educational outreach helps installers and residents sort of familiarize themselves with both solar in the area, but also the processes behind permitting and what they need to do to efficiently and effectively install a system. Now with Northampton, we selected them because, first of all, they're a very early adopter of online software. They adopted an online database first in 1998, and although it didn't allow for online submission, they have now added a email submission. So there's a downloadable PDF on their website, which is also fillable online, and contractors can submit that via email and also request it to be issued via email as well. On top of that, Northampton works proactively with installers, and if a piece of an application or something needs to be changed, they'll work with the installer to make those changes and improve application quality going forward for future projects. The assistant building commissioner specializes in residential projects, while the building commissioner oversees commercial projects. So this specialization helps the building department sort of hone in on specific portions of the building code and be more efficient and spend less time on any given project. And then on the next slide, you'll see they have simplified fees for solar. They're flat fees that reflect the staff time spent on a given project. And it's not always the case that with valuation-based fees, it's not always the case that a more expensive system will require more time and more labor from the staff and inspectors. So this is just reflective of solar in that area. For larger systems, though, they have a commercial fee calculator which can be requested by installers, and that just helps installers gauge what a potential fee may be for a given project. Now with Pittsfield, they are a part of the Berkshire Online Permitting Program, which is, it involves 16 municipalities, but Pittsfield moved from a completely paper-based system to one that's fully integrated online. And the building department and installers can easily track the progress of a permit application, but also the department and the installers can contact one another via the platform and really speed up any augmentation that needs to be done to documents. But because in the past, if something was missing or something needed to be changed, a letter would be sent by the building department to inspectors, and that could potentially increase the permit issuance time by weeks. If you see on the next slide, their permit issuance time, because of this online software, went from about 2 to 3 weeks to 2 to 3 days, so a really drastic increase there. The department is now more financially efficient, and they're able to review more permits much faster. Now with Wellfleet out on Cape Cod, they were selected for their sort of anticipation for a Solarize campaign that occurred there. And just brief background on Solarize, it's this bulk buy program that as more residents sign up for during this campaign, which is usually about 6 months long, as more residents sign on to install solar, the price overall drops. So a given resident will spend less the more people sign up. And DOER issues grants for those, but Wellfleet, Wellfleet, in anticipation of this program and sort of a large influx of building permits, convened a series of meetings. And these meetings were attended by the installers that were participating in the program, local residents, the building department staff, and the community officers for the Solarize campaign. And these meetings helped installers familiarize themselves with the building department's processes, and they helped the building department sort of adapt their needs to solar and familiarize themselves with the installers as well. But out of these meetings, a checklist was developed for installers, and that really helped installers nail down what they would need for any given permit application and really improve the quality from permit application to permit application. But as you can see here on this slide, previous to the Solarize campaign, Wellfleet was seeing maybe 1 permit a month, or 1 permit every other month, to about 11 permits every month during the campaign. This is just in regards to solar. But they only have a team of 2 there, so this is a large increase in workload. But by thinking ahead and convening these meetings and really preparing for it, they were able to adapt their processes and effectively account for this large increase. So with that, we'll move to our third poll question, which is, what are the biggest barriers that you see to streamlining your permitting process?
Two more minutes for folks to vote. Okay, we've got 14% say lack of staff, 29% or so are saying lack of funding, 30% lack of training and information resources, and then others, the other category that's voted. No one voted for our jurisdiction requires in-depth permitting.
Great. So moving right along, and although different municipalities have different permitting processes because they're in different places and have different needs, and their processes need to reflect that, just some of the general needs and barriers that we found, which were definitely in line with the poll, were first off not necessarily having enough resources, and that could be not having enough staff members or just simply not having enough time in the day to deal with the amount of permits that come across their desk, because solar permits are only a small part of what they see, and they've got a lot of other things to worry about as well. But on top of that, not having enough funding available to alter their processes, because it takes time to learn new processes and then implement them, especially when it's involving online permitting, which can be costly in itself. On top of that, we heard more desire for having permitting and inspection trainings, but also more clarity and training surrounding safety for fires and firemen. But in general, we found that having clear pathways of communication between installers and inspectors and building department staff really helped out a lot, and really for installers to be proactive in whatever municipality they're working in early on in the process, but also having building departments engage with these installers and provide feedback on applications so that going forward they can improve application quality. There are other things as well, like having clearly defined inspection windows so that installers aren't waiting, and then having installers really make sure that they go through building departments' websites and make sure that they submit all the correct documents. But moving right along, just some things that we found that are currently ongoing. We'll wait for the next slide here. But some things that are currently ongoing in Massachusetts. The DOER released a model permit guide a few years ago for municipalities to adopt or base some of their procedures off, and this includes model zoning and simplifying and reducing the redundancies for zoning and permitting and siting. But on top of that, we're also seeing a lot of municipalities adopt specific solar price carve-outs, so that's having a specific solar fee in their fee schedule. We found that sometimes solar, when it wasn't specifically what's the word I'm looking for, in the fee schedule, sometimes it would apply to different things. So it would apply to new construction or roofing or an addition, but having it clearly defined in the fee schedule can really help installers. We also saw, just in general, increased familiarity with solar permits. So as solar becomes more popular, like Kara mentioned earlier, building inspectors are really familiarizing themselves with the technology. But really in continuing to improve that familiarity through trainings and communication with installers and building departments, and just having that engagement can be really helpful. And then finally, we're seeing more and more municipalities switch to online permitting software. Like I mentioned with Pittsfield, there are many across the state that are starting to do that as well. But just some higher impact, low cost solutions that municipalities can think about adopting are having a downloadable PDF on their website of a building application form can be really helpful, especially when it's fillable online, like is the case with Northampton. And having a specific solar landing page or section on their website can really be helpful as well for pointing installers in the right direction. Having a permitting checklist as well, as is the case with Wellfleet, can really improve application quality and speed up the process so there's just less back and forth between an inspector and an installer. We're also, another thing that building department can do is have inspectors specialize in a given area depending upon what's more common in your municipality, whether it's small residential or ground-mounted systems or commercial systems. Having different inspectors, if you have that flexibility, specialize in different areas can be very helpful. But just to round it off, some other things that are ongoing in New England, Connecticut has a similar permitting guide, and the state government is issuing demos of online permitting software to different municipalities. In Vermont, they've got a very unique system in which an application is submitted to the Public Service Board, and if the utility doesn't issue a complaint within 10 days, the building permit is just automatically issued for solar. In New Hampshire, they've run some sort of pilot projects with certain municipalities, streamlining their processes and reporting back on the effectiveness of those. They also have a permitting guide as well. And then in Rhode Island, another permitting guide, but the municipalities are currently rolling out online permitting. So very soon the state will have comprehensive online permitting. And with that, I will pass it back to my colleague, Chad.
Thanks, Will. So finally, just in terms of next steps, for those that are interested in next steps after listening to the webinar. So the first is that the case studies will be published and are coming soon. So definitely keep an eye out for those. We've mentioned some of the great resources that are available from the Clean Energy States Alliance as well as DOER. So DOER has hosted a number of trainings throughout the state, and they have those resources from those trainings available, as well as the various state permitting guides that Will was just mentioning from other New England states. And there are also a number of Department of Energy resources available that show examples of solar landing pages, of permit checklists, of permit application fees, and then there's the DOER model, sort of expedited permit process that's modeled after the solar ABCs program. And finally, the Department of Energy is recently launched what's called the Solar Powering America by Recognizing Communities program. And this allows municipalities to seek recognition from the Department of Energy if they've taken steps to become more solar friendly by reducing soft costs for solar. And there is technical assistance available for jurisdictions that are seeking SPARK designation. That program launches, the actual designation criteria launch in April. So if you are interested, please let us know. And if you're interested in making permitting improvements as part of an application to become designated under SPARK, there's national technical assistance, free technical assistance available to help your jurisdiction do that. So with that, I think we can have time to take a few questions.
Tony, are you able to launch the questions?
I just hit the plus button on the toolbox. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep. So it looks like the first question is, the Solarize program is also offered in Boston. Is there a difference between how Solarize affected Wellfleet and Boston? So not having worked directly on either of those Solarize programs, I know that there were a couple of rounds of Solarize in Boston, is my understanding, and I don't recall what the timing was in terms of whether they had the fast track program available before or after. So I would have to follow up afterwards to sort of clarify what the timing of that was. But I think one of the reasons that we highlighted Wellfleet was the fact that they saw that these permits were going to be coming and then sort of sought to meet with stakeholders ahead of time to avoid a a bottleneck of a bunch of permits that are stalled or not able to go through as a result of the rush for Solarize. So the next question, how does Germany do permitting in 8 days and it takes us 90? Part of that is a larger market results in greater efficiencies. Part of it is standardizing the permit across all jurisdictions. They have just sort of become more familiar with the technology as more of it gets installed, and there's less concern from either individual inspectors or individual communities as to the safety or reliability or extra checks and balances that need to be in place that may not be necessary for a standard residential rooftop system. So a lot of it is standardization, simplification, and also transparency, and that everyone knows what the process is going forward and has very clearly defined beginning and end. But there's really no inherent reason why. I mean, the technology is the same. So if it can, safely be permitted within, a week in other places, there's no reason why we couldn't do that here. Have there been communities that have actually adopted the model zoning, seeing some resistance to the adoption of the model zoning? Yeah, I don't know offhand the number of communities, and Kara is also not sure. So we can follow up to see if there's a sort of a database or numbers that have tracked how many have adopted the model zoning. And to be clear, zoning and permitting are different. We mentioned zoning because it's a resource that's out there that's related to soft costs, but zoning and permitting are two different approaches and sort of related but distinct and different. You could adopt a streamlined permitting process without having to change zoning, and vice versa. Just a comment that Pittsfield also had a Solarize program. Yeah, the Mass CEC has been running a number of rounds of Solarize programs over the last few years, and I can't remember the exact count off the top of my head of how many jurisdictions in Massachusetts have done Solarize, but it's many, and generally is successful. And if there wasn't interest in streamlining permitting when you do a Solarize program, as we demonstrated, there soon will be, because there will be an influx of permits. So next question, some small towns don't have their own building departments and use a sort of shared or regional building service. Did we engage with any of those, and were they interested in streamlining the process? Yeah, we definitely did. In many cases, we were, as we were reaching out to individual municipalities, we were referred to the regional inspector, and we talked to a number of those across the state as part of it, and they were all generally interested in streamlining the process, making their lives easier, trying to get better applications from solar installers, and also described sort of variation among municipalities and also variation among installers in terms of quality and time within the jurisdictions that they are shared.
Yeah, and just to chime in there, the Franklin Regional Council of Governments has a sort of group online permitting submission software system that many municipalities are taking part into. So there are options for smaller towns and sort of aggregating their efforts towards streamlining processes.
And at the national level, we've been working with 10 different regional planning commissions across the country to provide them with resources around reducing soft costs, because it certainly does sort of save time and also doesn't recreate the wheel to work at a regional level in terms of providing resources around whether it's permitting or other soft costs. So the example that Will mentioned from FERCOG is a good example of taking a regional approach and providing sort of regional solutions.
So that's all of our questions, and I just want to thank Kara, Will, Chad, and Charlie for helping run the webinar, and also thank all of our attendees for joining us today. And I'm just pulling up the slide here for those of you that may have, here it is, those of you that may have joined on late. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted at our website. And you're able to click on the camera icon in the top right of your screen and save any slides for your future reference. And then you can also, if you do that, you can copy and paste these links into your web browser. And we'll also be typing up some answers to these questions that came in, and those will be posted as well. And again, I'll pull up the slide here of our regional coordinators. You know, if you have any other specific questions about technical assistance or how Green Communities Division can be helpful, please reach out to your regional coordinators, and they'll get back to you quickly. And with that, I just want to thank everybody again, and we'll be doing another webinar in late March, and we'll look out for the invitation.
Okay, closing up.